Hey everybody, it's Free to Play Bust. Patch 1.11 is here, so we're ready to do our initial impressions for Expeditions. As kind of a bonus to this video moving forward, I'm also going to include the tier list in these initial impressions videos. They seem like they should synergize pretty well. If you're only here for one or the other, then you can use the little skip feature down in the description. But it seems to make sense for me moving forward. But nonetheless, starting out with the actual card nerfs and changes, Aurelion Sol takes an additional 5 attack to flip, which is pretty big. Aurelion Sol was. He seemed incredibly easy to flip an expedition. It seemed like every time he was played, he flipped immediately that turn, and it was like always super close. It was never 25 attack on the board. It was like opponent had 20 or 21 exactly every time, and so I think this does significantly weaken Aurelion Sol. We were only ever playing one copy of him. I rarely recommended ever playing two, but it's just. Not something I think I can really recommend playing two now. I think the card pool is still okay. There are some more changes to the pool that we'll touch on later, but do note that Aurelion Sol and the key to the Invoke decks is a little bit weaker now. Next on the list, Radiant Guardian catches a bit of a nerf. I don't think it's quite enough to make us not want to play her. We haven't been like super interested in playing Radiant Guardians in the current format anyways. Kind of the decks that she really shined against, or kind of like what she wanted to be in anyways. It was kind of these decks that didn't get much value out of like playing spells. Like you typically think like, oh man, I played a divination and drew 2 cards for 1, so I got a 2 for 1 and some value and all that kind of thing. But there's other ways to get value, and the way we typically got it for Radiant Guardian is she kills like 3 or 4 units before she gets taken down, and so that style of deck, that kind of just grind your opponent out with stats kind of deck, just isn't super good in the current format, and that's what Radiant Guardian is A, good in, and B, good against. And so as far as expeditions go, I don't think she really needed a nerf, but she is a bit weaker, but something we're still willing to play. On to the next one. Inspiring Mentor got the buff that he needed. This card I felt was pretty unplayable, because you're wanting to put it in aggressive decks, and then it just comes down on the first turn and just doesn't do anything after that. Like the total recall theme of returning units to our hand to replay them is just not that spectacular. So like Navori Conspirator will be pretty happy to see this guy get a boost. Just being able to play this and get into damage and trade with something, especially being able to trade up with 2-drops, is a pretty big deal. The only downside for the Mentor is that most of the Ionia decks that would like really benefit from this, they just aren't that great. Zed is already good enough without this guy. The karmas are where this really gets a boost, but most of the karma pools are fairly weak. There's just not a lot of aggressive Ionia that's good outside of Zed. That kind of does lead into picks down here. The Inspiring Mentor does, get improved with the collective support pool, like being able to boost up, say, a Young Witch, and then have your 2 attack Elusive and Young Witch, and then a 3 attack Inspiring Mentor. It's not a bad deal. He's certainly a worthy boost. As to where his picks down here, picks is still garbage. I feel bad for picks. Can't recommend that you play this. There might be some corner cases to where you get a big support chain deck to where you have a lot of Mountain Sojourners and Terrix, and you're looking to just go full support where picks will find a home. But I would say 9 times out of 10 you want absolutely nothing to do with picks. Picking up a point of health doesn't do anything to change that. Down here, Jack the Winner, he's still a 5/5 for 5 with upside. These are all completely fine. It's not a card that we're actively seeking, but he is better than the majority of the similarly costed units. And so this is kind of the Sleep with the Fishes. It does deal damage to a unit. One of your units to deal 2 damage to an opponent. It is good at closing out games. A lot of these Bilgewater decks do have issues closing out games, but this isn't like a build around card or anything, and so he's a little bit worse, but we'll still play him. Petty Officer caught a nerf. It's back down to 1 health. Still, even if if we get a 1 drop out of this thing for 3 stats, you're getting 7 stats for 3 mana. The versatility more than makes up for losing out on that point of health. Petty Officer is still pretty good. What I think to be one of the biggest changes in the patch notes is to Bastion. Bastion used to just give Spell Shield for a round, which kind of just made it this like reactionary, kind of like deny, not quite good enough, but you can be proactive with it and things. It was real awkward, and we never wanted to play it. But now giving a permanent +1/+1 in Spell Shield is a pretty big deal. For any deck that's looking to build around a specific unit, it's spectacular. If you're looking to, build around Leona or Taric, this is still just a great all-around spell. Not good enough to make me want to actually build around Taric, but it is still most certainly an upgrade over what it was. Being able to be proactive and protect something when we have these awkward turns to where we have like 7 total mana and don't really want to add anything to the board and just want to spew out some mana so that doesn't go to waste. Bastion fits in great there. If it counters a removal spell, it's great. This new version has a lot of interaction, and I feel like we're going to get real mad at this spell at some point in the future. I'm not a huge fan of Spell Shield as a mechanic, but it's here. We're living with it, and it's certainly, Bastion is something we're going to be seeing a whole lot more of in Expedition. Cosmic Inspiration, not pseudo-free anymore. That's just kind of whatever. If you're in the dedicated Invoke deck and you're pulling off Cosmic Inspirations, you've already won the game anyways, and refilling the spell mana is just something that wasn't even necessary. Rumble, kind of the same deal. I've never played or had a grandfather Rumble played against me where he didn't immediately win the game. That immediately winning the game had absolutely nothing to do with granting allies 4 health. Giving another ally 4 health now is a boost, but if you've run into these situations where you play Rumble and then don't win, then I don't know, you're doing it wrong, man. And so I don't think this is a real noticeable upgrade. So here, Hush does catch a boost, and the kind of interesting with Hush in this wall of text is they say that they plan to have a change for it in the future that just makes it cheaper and non-repeatable. Which is a thing to keep note of, but it costs 1 more on each additional copy now, which is probably fine. I've never been upset to have Hush in my deck. I've never wanted 2 Hushes in my deck. The times that we cast it multiple times in a turn are kind of rare, but are a great opportunity to pick up some value, and so it's still one of these cards that we're happy to have 1 of in every deck. We don't want 2 of, and if we have 0 of, we're not really that upset. Not a huge change here. And lastly, the Mountain Goat catches an upgrade. This feels bigger to me than it seems. I think the Diana and Nocturne decks are just like real close to being extremely good, and Mountain Goat is kind of one of these top tier 2-drops. It was just so unfortunate to always trade, your 1-drop, your 2-drop for their 1. I think that's, why this change to Inspiring Mentor is so big. When I said, he can trade up, you can trade your 1 for a 2. It's just so bad when your opponent gets to do the reverse to you when you play your 2-drop. And then your opponent is able to just trade their 1 for it. And so picking up this point of health is a pretty big deal, because there's still just so many of these value 1-drops in Expedition. Whether or not it's like the Gem Maker out of Targon or the Last Breath dudes out of Shadow Isles, there's just a ton of value-oriented 1-drops that just trading your Mountain Goat for was the worst. And so picking up this point of health is pretty big. So all in all, not an unreasonable set of changes. Targon did get weakened a bit, and just on Aurelion Sol, but I think the pickup to Bastion was the big thing here as far as Targon goes. I think this is actually the biggest change throughout the course of Expedition, but otherwise there's not anything that makes me want to change what we're currently doing, outside of, we're happier to have Mountain Goat and we're happier to have Inspired Mentor. Okay, and then to move on to the Expedition archetypes, not a whole lot of changes. The big thing going on here, where they removed the Call of the Mountain bonus on the champions, and so one of the big things we've been like trogging along with here for the past few weeks is, it's just a dearth of like Leona decks, and then Aurelion Sol easily being paired with Trundle. Having these effects all fall off, really make the format feel pretty different. Whether you agree or disagree with what Riot did with these Call of the Mountain bonuses, I think it's fine. If it comes to playing the same format for 2 months straight, or playing a slightly different format for 2-week chunks at a time, I don't know. Maybe we play too much, but gotta push the button. I feel like making these champions show up is good, at least at the very beginning of the set. Maybe not for a full 5 weeks, but that first 2 or 3 weeks, I think it's a pretty great idea. But that's gone now. I think that's going to make Aurelion Sol weaker. It's going to make Leona weaker. And then I think this will actually improve champions like Diana and Nocturne, who don't need like a full Call of the Mountain build around to be good. So it'll be interesting to see how things shape up. And then kind of the other big thing here, invoke cards show up less in the trade options, which I've been kind of curious about this. If you watch the recordings over the past week or two, we've been playing a lot of Fishbone style decks, and it seemed like Professor Von Yip was showing up in like every single trade. And so I'm kind of curious how all of these trades work. They've clearly, kind of focused certain trades towards certain deck archetypes, like in the Professor Von Yip example. I'm pretty sure it's just to get him out of your deck, right? If you aren't a one-drop centric deck, then Von Yip isn't any good. They're giving you the chance to pivot away from him, and it seems like they're calling out the option that they were giving you the chance to pick up more invoke cards, and they've kind of reduced that down. This just plays into that Aurelion Sol being weaker that I called out a bit earlier. And then down here in the archetype changes, these are live on the FTP Best site as well. I got all of the card pools updated today. I guess it would be today. Whenever this video is released, it's on the 30th. It's the day the patch notes came out, the physical patch came out. We got the site updated. But with the changes here, Otherworldly Creatures is the Aurelion Sol Trundle deck. They just added a whole bunch of garbage to it. This is a big sign that deck was way too good. In addition to Aurelion Sol getting nerfed, the invoke cards being reduced, and then now they're just adding 4 100% garbage cards into Otherworldly Creatures. It was apparently just way too good of a deck. And I think invokes were actually too good from what we were seeing. Just too easy to make an invoke-centric deck based on either Trundle or Aurelion Sol or Leona. I shouldn't say Trundle, he doesn't have invokes, but Trundle paired with Leona or Aurelion Sol paired with anything. And so this, I don't want to say that this pool has been gutted. Already had problems with the Freylord side. The Freylord side picking up Feral Mystic and Tall Tales is huge. These are cards that are just awful, 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 and picking up one of them is easily like a mulligan to 6, or if you pick up 2, like a mulligan to 5 in Magic, and those mulligan to 5 games are super hard to win. And so it's pretty tough with these, where now you have to take, if Porofly is paired with the Epic Dragon, like you have a real decision there, because Porofly is garbage. And so all in all, this is going to really drag down these Aurelion Sol pools. And then the other one, the one that I felt needed to take a big hit was Leona. I felt the Leona pools were just too good all around. I felt like she was far and away the best champion out of Call of the Mountain, if not the entire game. And so seeing these cohesiveness ratings go down is big to me, because what I feel like the real strength in these Leona card pools is the 1 and the 2 drop, the Solaris, the 2/2 that comes down and gets +1/+1, and then the 3/2 for 2 that comes down and gets 4 health. They number one, on curve boost Leona, and so they're cards that you just physically want to be playing. You want the 1/1-on-1, the 2/3/2 on 2. They get you right on track to play a flipped Leona on 4. But then those cards just 100% shut down every combat. Like, it's impossible for those cards to lose a combat. Like, on the first turn, there's nothing that can combat with a 3/3. And even on, like, turn 5, there's very few units that can combat with a 3/6. And so they were just all around. They just, like, shut down every single combat. And it just makes it super, super easy for Leona to get into the mid to late game, just straight up doing what she wants. Like, the cards are just outclassing everything else in the game. And so I'm hoping this really pushes down Leona's ability to pick up those cards. Like, if you pick up for the 1-drop and for the 2-drop. In the old runs, that was like just a super easy way to push you directly into 7 wins. But now, if you still have 4 1-drops, but only 2 of them are the Daybreak guy, and then you still have 4 2-drops, but only 1 of them's the Daybreak guy, your curve is still in the same spot, but the quality is just so much lower. And so hopefully, adding in these kind of garbage cards, they aren't garbage, but they're pretty mediocre. And then taking these cohesiveness ratings out will just really reduce Leona's early game. All in all, I think she's still a tier 1 champion. We'll touch in on that in a moment. But adding Blessing of Targon is fine. Radiant Dawn is the actual Leona build around, and that deck is fine getting into combat. Blessing of Targon is fine. Fledgling Stellacorn is unplayable, and it lost Hush, which is fine. This is, as we talked about with Hush, it's just a card that we're okay to be playing. We aren't super for or against having it in our deck. And then Solar Winds is the pool paired with Yasuo. Why it had all these invoke cards in it, I don't know. It should have been centered around stunning things, but they've gone and made it more combat oriented and less invoke oriented. And so I would really like to see them push Radiant Dawn towards being an invoke deck, and Solar Winds being a Leona flip build around focused on the combat units, but that's not the way they've decided to take it, and it kind of is what it is. But that'll do it for our initial impressions, and then I just do want to jump in on the tier list for a little bit. The updated tier list is also up at ftpbus.com. The only change I physically did here was I took Otherworldly Journeys, or Otherworldly Creatures, Aurelian Soul out of tier 2, moved it down to tier 3. I think that's all of the really relevant changes that came from the tier list. Nothing changed with any of the tier 1 decks except with Leona's, which I still feel are exceptionally good. We're going to need some hard evidence over the next few weeks if she should be pushed down to tier 2. I don't feel like she should be. I still feel like both of the Leona build-arounds are just straight up better than everything at tier 2, with the potential exception of Lee Sin. We do still have Lee Sin at tier 2. If you're a constructed player, you should be fairly aware of how oppressive Lee Sin has become in constructed. It's real hard for us to physically see this in Expedition. I don't remember the exact number we're on, but we just did trial 167 or something, and we've seen Lee Sin maybe twice or 3 times, and so he just doesn't show up in a volume for me to be yeah, this card is just busted. And then, kind of the other thing with him is what we knew from our runs. We had some runs with multiple Kato the Arms and Lee Sin, and what people are finding out now in Constructed is that when you give Lee Sin Overwhelm and Dragon Kick something, the Dragon Kick does full damage, there's no blocker, and then he overwhelms our opponent for the whatever his attack is. We've known about this for ages. I'm surprised it took the Constructed people so long to figure this out, but it's being done now with the Zenith Blade. And so, if you aren't specifically in, Noxus looking for epics, or if you aren't in Targon, then these pools, there are a lot of bad pairings with Lee Sin. Pairing Lee Sin with Shadow Isles is terrible. And so I think that's kind of the thing that's keeping him from pushing up into tier 1 at the moment, or there are just so many bad pairings. Setting him up with Freylord is awful. Setting him up with Demacia is awful. Setting him up with Bilgewater is awful. So if you do get Lee Sin and you pair him with Noxus and find some Katos, or if you pair him with Targon and find some Zenith Blades, then you are on the path to just an easy 7 winner. But I think, him not being a spectacular build around without the help of something else is what keeps him from being pushed up into tier 1. And then down here in tier 3, the other ones that I actually wanted to call out, the ones that I could see pushing forward here in the future are both of the Dianas, not just because of the Mountain Goat change, but because the Invoke changes as well. These really aggro decks had a lot of problems just getting outvalued by Invoke decks. They would play, a shitty Invoke unit that could actually trade with one of your units, and then if they grabbed an AoE, you just lost. They had too much of an easy time just shutting down the game. With less Invoke cards, I could see the Dianas getting better. Can also see the Nocturne getting better. And then the other cards that The last pools I wanted to call out that still play particularly well are the Misfortunes, both Moonlight Heist and Scouted Out, and the Quins. The Scout decks I still think are pretty good, are kind of things that could be pushing themselves up into Tier 2 with the Invoke decks getting weaker. Just take a little bit of time to tell. But that's going to do it for this one. Agree or disagree with our initial impressions or our tier list? Let us know down in the comments. This is Free to Play Bust, and we thank you for being here.